What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Today we have a special edition. I'm here talking with Mark Time. Mark, how are you, sir?
Doing great, man. Happy to be here.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate you coming in. I never, Mark, just so you know, I never thought that the journey would lead it to situations like this, doing lives and just chatting and just two guys nerding out really quick. I'm really excited to do that type of thing. I know that you are too. You're just coming off of a show. That's probably where I want to start. But what's on the wrist? That's where
Oh
we
yeah, yeah.
really need to start.
The currently sold out M 1.2, and it's slick, man. It's slick.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I actually have the watch you sent me, the M1.2, right? But fate have it, right? I came home today and look what came in the mail just in time.
Yeah.
The M4. Yeah, it's so funny because I was actually walking to the back of my building and I would have missed it because I would have just took the elevator up
Yeah.
and the door didn't work. So it was like meant to be. We walked through the front entrance, it was in the mail. I'm like, oh, perfect. And I gotta say, off rip, we're gonna get into it, right? You don't have a tremendous amount of models, so I want to spend time going through each one.
Yeah.
First impressions, I love it. I love it. And I'm not just saying that. I really do feel like it feels like a luxury high end piece, but we're going to get into it. We're going to get
Yeah.
into it. Um, so Mark, let's start from the beginning, right? Where did your passion start? Right? Did it start at a very young age? Like, talk to us about the beginning of where your passion started to create the brand.
Yeah, so I started off in a kind of creative field, mostly like building studios and content, specifically helped build the Young Turks back in 2011. And so just kind of like from this very creative background, also then made films, won an Oscar with a couple friends for a short film and did that world. And anywho, everything that I always did was like, what's the next thing? I got to learn like machine learning or esports or whatever, which I also got into. And when COVID hit, I think we all kind of looked inward and said, like, hey, what do we want to do next? And so for me, I told my wife, I was like, I need to find something that serves no legitimate purpose and just allows
Mhm.
me to have this mind going in like in a direction that can
Mhm.
just go forever. And like most people, the Talking Watches series, specifically the John Mayer episode, but then
Mhm.
that whole series, like delving into that, it really got me into it. And I was like, all right. And so then I got the George Daniels book. I got all the different books. I started getting into vintage repairs. So I bought
Okay.
watches from the 20s to the 50s, and just bought a bunch of those lots where it's like 100 watches and you're like maybe two or three of them work. And I got into repair and cleaning, and I would just take watches apart and figure it out. And there were a lot of watches that I broke and it didn't work. And every time that I would like grab an itty bitty screw and I'd press a little too hard and it'd jump out and go
Ping,
into the carpet, and it's like this whole watch is done.
gone.
And it always happened. For some reason, I was so good at fixing the watches that were cheap, but the expensive watches always like lost one little screw and like the whole thing was gone. Or I started getting into dial cleaning as well, which that's a
Mm.
whole nother art in itself. And I would just rub away, like I would clean the dial, but then, I saw in your last video with the AliExpress one where like you were blotting it to get it clean, but then in the process
Yes.
of cleaning it, you ruin the paint. And so
Yes.
I did the same thing. I've ruined a lot of dials. And so, anywho, yeah, I did that, and then I got into the AliExpress stuff and all the like cheap options to kind of figure out like, hey, what colors do I like? What sizes do I like? What designs do I like? And I really just did a whole scatterbrain approach. But in that
Mhm.
process, when I started to buy new watches, I then kind of said, you know what, I love the process of taking apart, cleaning, and reassembling. And I had a 30% success rate. Like if it was broken, I would 30% of the time I'd get it working again.
Mhm.
But then I just didn't like wearing old watches anymore. And so I just wanted to like try something new and fresh. And in that process, I almost went to watchmaking school, probably in the Lancaster one, Or I really wanted to go to Glasgow because my wife is German, and I was like, hey, listen,
Mm.
what if I, quit my job and we move to Glasgow, and you support us while I go to watchmaking school? And she's like, no. So so anywho, I worked for a bunch of startups, and I was fortunate enough to make some extra money from stock and stuff like that. And I just took some of that money and I put it into the M1, and that was such a
Mm.
wonderful process where it was just like looking at all designs everywhere and just figuring out, it's like, what do I want to see, like purely just me, in the Venn diagram of like everyone else and me. I just want to look at the circle of like me. And so that M1 is really just me sitting alone in in isolation. Like, this is exactly what I want. And it was really great. And I'm so glad that I was able to make that exactly how I wanted. And it was really great that there were some people who really resonated with it. But I did get some feedback as well, is that people hated the M design, and they were just like, this is a great watch if you remove the giant M over the entire face. And and I thought about it, and it was like, in my mind, the design made sense of why I did it, and long convoluted way. But I went to school for
Oh, did we lose him? Uh-oh. I think we might have lost Mark. At least, yeah, I don't even hear him or see him now. So I think we might have. Oh,
all right.
there
Hey,
you
can you
go.
see me now?
Anything that can go wrong will go wrong,
Sweet.
Mark. I can hear you now.
Oh no, I can't hear you.
I can hear you.
All right, I'm gonna leave and I come right back. Hold on.
Okay, no problem. No problem. So, guys, he was talking about the M1, and let me bring that up on screen. We're gonna have to do a little, but you guys know I'm good on my feet. The M1 was the watch that he was talking about, and it's funny because I hope he doesn't get offended. I'll repeat myself when Mark comes back, but the M1 was the first design that Mark did, and he got feedback that the M was just too much. It was too loud. And to be honest with you, when I first saw the watch, I actually got a fashion watch kind of vibe from him. Let me bring that Mark back up.
Can you hear me
So,
now?
Mark, yes, I hear you. I
Great.
was kind of piggybacking off of what you said. I'll let you jump back where you were, but I hope you don't be offended by this. And in fact, you know what? Let me pull myself up on here. And I have a watch that I was wearing today, so I want to be crystal clear when I say this. This is what I was wearing earlier. This is a Michael Kors. This is my most valuable watch in my collection, and I want to say that before I say this. When I first found your brand, Mark, I could tell you the story on that too. When I first found your brand and I first saw this M1, let me do this. When I first saw this M1, I was like, this is a fashion brand. I'm
Yeah.
like, this is probably just maybe it's a Michael Kors. You know what I mean? I didn't necessarily think that, but it did give me fashion brand
Yeah.
vibes. And I hope that, again, I hope that's not disrespectful to you. And I'm a type of collector, and my vibe on my channel is that we accept all watches here, right? You're a collector no matter how you decide to collect. Um, but then I got closer and I saw different iterations that you had. And then I saw, oh, there's an automatic movement in here. And I was like, wow, there's something more to this. And I don't hate that big M. I really don't. Yeah, it's gonna definitely be a love or hate type of thing. So I get it. But go ahead, go back to where you were.
Yeah.
Let's jump
So
back in.
I'm so glad that I did it, because in acting school we would talk about our intention, and it's like all this other stuff, and it didn't matter. Like, what
Mhm.
mattered was like, what did people pick up? And
Right.
so what I loved in that feedback process would people be like, hey, I think that you're trying to do this. If you want to do
Mhm.
this, like, change this.
Right.
And what was great is, with that first release, I did it my way, which then kind of released me from needing to do it my way again. And it was more of like, great, let's go play with other people. And I think that's still the case with all the designs, which is, it's all me up front of like, hey, this is my vision. But then
Mm.
once I then bring it to friends, family, community, it's like, what do you think about this? Then it's getting that feedback loop. And
Yeah.
I think that was like, the M1 is like my greatest success and failure, because it's success
Mm.
because it was like me, my vision, first time, that's it. But then the failure was, I didn't listen to anyone else. And
Mm.
And what I found is that um, the the secondary joy of this was the community aspect, and so
Sure.
getting people's feedback of like, even if people hated it, they were talking about it and saying like, hey, here's how you can do it better. And so those conversations have gone from giant broad strokes into more fine strokes, and yeah,
Right.
it's been fun.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think what people, or at least I'm curious, what did the process look like for? I mean, I'm pretty sure, listen, we all dance with the idea of one place or another, especially if you modify, if you get into watches like that. I
Yeah.
actually took a course. Do you know Watch Fix? The company Watch Fix.
Mm-mm.
Well, it's a company that you could take classes online to learn how to do the cleaning and everything of the movement, right? To
Yeah.
break it down, put it back together. And they usually start off with a large movement, like a pocket size one, just so like that the pieces are easy to mess with. I took that class. It ended up not being for me. Long story short, what I'm trying to say is that I, of course, danced with the idea of starting a watch company. So I want to know what your journey was, specifically with the M1, finding the right manufacturing. Just if you
Yeah.
can, in a nutshell, explain to us how that looked like.
First, it was $100,000, so I don't recommend it for the faint of heart.
Wow.
Yeah. The next is I went through 60 different manufacturers, and it was a long process to like figure out the one. So the main thing was, conversation back and forth, me coming in and saying like, hey, I had an idea of what I want to do. Can you do this?
Mhm.
And the manufacturer that I found was the best at being able to articulate not only what could be improved. There were
Mhm.
certain limitations of like, hey, if you want to do
Sure.
this, this is, we'd have to switch to this. And then the other was that they were able to just kind of, yeah, just have a great dialogue back and forth. And early on, I kind of resonated with them. And then the other thing was, once I found out that they were TÜV Rheinland German certified, my wife is German. I was like, "Yep, that's the flag that I gotta go with them." And what that means is they work with a lot of German luxury brands that they're not allowed to talk
Mm.
about.
Okay.
But that's kind of the nice thing is that you have these manufacturers in China who make the parts for the big name luxury brands, and they also still have the ability to work with people like me. So it takes a while,
Mm.
and it's a weird thing in the micro brand world because we don't quite talk about it. It's like, oh, who do you use for a manufacturer? But I think that's
Mm.
kind of part of the process. Is like you got to do a lot of homework to figure out like who the right one is. And I think that if you or anyone else wants to get into that world, it's really just doing the legwork of Google searching and then reaching out to everyone, and yeah, just a lot of communication back and forth and quotes and yeah, technical drawings, that kind of stuff, and eventually you'll land on someone good.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. So I guess it's more like the more you're able to network and have relationships and build them quickly. Obviously, the communication you mentioned is key. But man, 100,000. Wow,
Yeah.
that may you may have killed a lot of dreams just there, Mark. You might have killed
Well,
a couple of dreams.
I mean, there's a lot of different ways to skin the cat, and I think that
Of
part of
course.
part of the reason why like I did that is like because of that I now have a great relationship with my manufacturer because they know that I'm not
Mm.
just like and so they're a little more lenient with me when I'm working on prototypes as well. So that's kind of the game plan, which I've told other micro brands as well. I like it a lot, and with that iterative process. Um, I'm able to make these prototypes and make enough where I always keep one or two for myself. And then
Right.
I'll sell off a couple as well to just kind of like cover costs a little bit. And that
Mhm.
way, I'll put them on Kickstarter for now. I don't know how long I'll do this, but I put them on Kickstarter. And then if people really like it, great. Like,
Mm.
we do the mass production, everything's great. And if not, then there's like a super limited run of things. And so, what's great is I've got a nice long list of people who want the M3 and the M4. So, but at the same time, it's like the people who did get it, like it's so cool and it's so, I don't know, very, very limited. So it's kind of fun that way where there's a small group of people who get to enjoy the prototypes, but then also the goal is for as many people as possible to enjoy the mass production as well.
Yeah, I got you. And speaking of that, I saw your website. It looks like you're doing pretty well as far as selling units.
Yeah.
What does the turnaround time look like right now? Like if we get somebody interested in one of the pieces, let's say the M4, and I'm maybe
Yeah.
speaking for myself. Whoa, how long are we looking at if I wanted to order that today?
Yeah, so I don't think I'm going to make the M4 in mass production. The reason
Mm,
why is I think the M4, which we'll get into the M5 because I think that's kind of the in my opinion the final thing of that. But with
okay.
that, I really wanted to tackle a dive watch, and it is
Mm,
a desk it's a desk diver. But then I
right.
also made the choice of like, all right, we'll do a screw down crown and we'll increase the thickness to get to 300 meters water resistant. So like it is a legit diver watch. But the issue was it was steel hands. There's no loom, and the bezel is like, in my opinion, it looks slick, but it's not
Mm,
legible if you're diving. And so, of course, like the people who buy dive watches, 99% of them are not using it for dive. But at the same time, like there's a design language for dive watches
right.
where that just didn't, it made a lot of people mad, which is kind of like fun in this process. It's like, it was
Yeah.
sacrilege of like, how dare you call this a dive
Yes.
watch? And
Yes, yes. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't mean to talk about other people's product, but I made a video not too long ago about the Zero Pass strap, which is essentially it's not a NATO strap, but it gives you the look. Dude, people
yeah,
hated that thing, and like passionately will tell you, well, you just lost the whole point of a NATO strap, so what the hell is that? You know what I mean? So, very brave of you to go that route and to seek that out. But I think the ones who get it also get it. You know what I mean? Like if I give you another diver, you just have another diver that you're not using for diving, right? So
yeah,
let me have some fun. Let me play with it. But let's not skip some steps. We're a little out of order. I'm sorry. So we were at the M1, right?
yeah.
Um, let's do this. Mark Time. Where did that come from? I know that there's deeper meaning behind it, but how did you arrive to that name being the brand name? How did you settle on that? Because that's got to be difficult to say. Okay, here we go. I have a brand that I want to do. I have to name it. What do I name it? That's got to be something that's not easy to do. So how'd you get to Mark Time?
Yeah, originally I wrote this big long diatribe of like all the story and blah blah blah, and like no one cared, and I didn't care. Um, and I I'm glad that it came to Mark Time, and I'll start with the end, which is
Mm,
out of all that stuff, like I'm really glad that it was Mark Time. And kind of
mhm,
going back to it, working in startups, my life, I lived at work. Like, I remember at one point, I just lived at the office. If I was awake, I was at the office. I would ride my bike in, what's it called? Swim trunks if it rained in LA just to get to the
mm,
office. And at a certain point, getting married, having a kid, that kind of stuff, that um, I I realized that I had to slow down a little bit. And at that point in my life, I ended up going to a float tank place once a week, and I ended up buying a float tank, and I would float 90 minutes a day to really just
wow.
like chill out. And what I found is that if I want to be useful to other people, I have to chill out myself for long enough so that I can
Right.
come in not needing anything from anyone else, but just showing up ready to go and like available and in a good place myself. So
Yes.
um, it's a weird thing of it's very narcissistic, it's very selfish, but as long as kind of the goal is great, you take that time for yourself to then go into other people's lives and kind of help out. So that's kind of the long and the short of it is that mark time is mark time for yourself. It's resting, pausing, so that you can go back into whatever you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, so just so you know, that resonates with me so much because I often preach to family members the exact same thing that you said. And it's not narcissistic. Respectfully, I'm going to say that it's necessary, right? We want to show up for the people that we love, but we often forget that if we don't take time to recharge our batteries, we have nothing to give, right?
Yep.
That's just mentally and physically and everything of the sort. So when I discovered that quote, right, and just like the name of your brand and what it means after the fact, and I was just like, oh, this is too crazy, right? And I kind of resonate exactly what it is, man. And I get excited about that. And you put that on your rotors, if I'm not mistaken, on the ones that are the
Yep.
visible. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So that's really cool. Okay. So we have the brand name, we have the first model. Now we get to the M1.2, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Well, so do you want to go chronological?
Yeah, chronological. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
So that the M2, which everyone asked about, was a tank, and it still may come back. And the
Okay.
issue that I found is that there were two things. One, it still had that giant M on it, and then I
Right.
redesigned it to have more of like the M2 and the M4 and the M3. But it
Right.
still, I couldn't using the Miota movement. I couldn't quite
Mhm.
get it the way that I wanted. The other movement that I was looking at was the Salida 1000, I believe, which was like a slimmer but smaller movement, but then it would drive up the cost like crazy. And so I think
Right.
that at, what I found was it wasn't exciting for me anymore. And I was like,
Okay.
I had a vision, and it was like mechanically, cost wise, like I couldn't make it work. That I felt confident going in and saying like, hey, spend a lot more money on this. It's worth it.
Right.
So that is kind of permanently on hold. I may come back to it. And then the M3 came in, and that screw design for the bezels that really came from. There's a couple different German um, brands that do that, and I
Hmm.
just loved it. Um, People, and that was very polarizing. Man, did people speak out about saying my OCD is killing me? I can't take the not uniform screws. But that was kind of like part of it. And
Okay.
so again, this was like I listened to the feedback, which, as you can see, like the Mark Time logo is all the way at the very bottom, and you need like glasses to see. Not only glasses, a microscope to see. So took out the M, put down the logo, and someone gave great feedback of saying like lean into the design and don't worry about the branding because the design is strong enough. So
Mm.
with this one, I really do feel confident about this one. There were a couple issues. One, the bracelet, it just wasn't as high quality as what the rest of the watch was. And so because of that, like that kind of, I don't know, dampened things. In addition to that, the bracelet itself was still good, but I just
Mhm.
knew that there was better. And so I found a better one. It didn't taper as much as well. So it was just kind of like halfway through the process, it went up to like 24,000 in Kickstarter. But then in the process of
Mm.
the feedback, I was like, yeah, it's a really good point. Yeah, it's a really good point. Oh, the gloss black really does look just kind of like an Apple Watch, man.
Mm.
And so I think I and everyone just kind of lost steam on it, where it was like, yeah, there's too many things that need to be improved for this. So I
Okay.
got really and I talked about an M3.2, and I may come back to that, but I think the screws are kind of like the last polarizing part where I'm not quite sure of listening to the feedback, but then also anywho. So that was something I may come back to. And then the next one was the M4. And usually I've got like four different designs going on at once. With the M4,
Mhm.
that was also kind of in tandem with the M3. This
Okay.
was really, I wanted to start playing with the bezel. And if you notice in the designs that I do, it starts with like kind of one piece at a time: the dials, the hands, the bezels, the bracelets, then the clasp. We'll get into it. But
Okay.
this was just like, I don't know, slick for me, where
Yeah.
I just wanted, slick is the word that comes to my mind. But then also, I just wanted to play with the bezel. And I knew that I always felt like diver watches, the bezel was always too, I don't know, noisy.
Mm.
And so with that, I wanted to play and riff on that design, but in a really subtle, slick way. And it
Okay.
is so slick, it is so clean that it's too clean to be a tool watch as a diver. And And again, and also I made the decision of saying, hey, I want to make it extra thick so I can, have that 300-meter water resistance instead of 200 meters, and also the screw down crown and the bigger bezel, and it ended up in the Venn diagram of things like the what's it called? The desk divers didn't like it because it was too big, and then the
Mm,
the diver people didn't like it because it was too desk divery. And so the big win on this is one, the bracelet and the clasp are awesome. Moving from the 3 to the 4, um, I don't. Yeah, you don't have the 3, but you can tell from the 4. It's a really nice bracelet. It's a really nice clasp with micro adjust. Um,
yes.
and then the other is the dial in the hands. Like as you see in the 5, I love it. And then also the bezel as well, which got incorporated into the 5. But it was the best of the M4, but just shrunk down into more minimal. And that's the thing with, if you watch The Bear, uh, he's a chef who talks about, his design of foods. And it's like just subtract, subtract. And I think that's
Mm,
what I look at is I'll kind of throw things out, and then it's like, all right, take away, throw things out, take it away. And the 5, in my opinion, I think we jumped over the M1.2, but yeah,
yes, we did.
yeah. So we'll go
We'll
to
go
the
back.
yeah, we'll go
We'll
back
go
to the
back.
one. Yeah. So with the 1.2, that was I feel like the M1 um the M1 was me in a bubble, and I was like,
Okay.
I want to take everything that I've learned from the feedback from the 2, the 3, and the 4, and I want to put it in um, the watch that I know and love, and like is still like my first love. And
Hmm.
so I updated the dial, I updated the hands, and I made it something. And specifically, adding the rubber strap specifically for especially those like lighter colors as well, it's just so fun. And I think it is kind of a bigger watch, but it wears slimmer. um and that's kind of what I was going for with this one, was just like fun. And with the rubber, with the design, with the loom, oh man, like if you can check out that loom shot, like it's so fun at night. Yeah, I when I put my kid to bed, we'll just like, we'll read a book. It'll be dark, and then once we turn out the lights, he's like, "Watch, watch," because he can see that loom, and it's cool.
Yeah.
And there's something stupid about like Indiglo. When I was a kid, you had the Timex thing, and so it's silly, it's stupid, but man, it's just fun. And I think that's what the M1.2 for me is just like it's the fun watch, man. And I sport the pink one a lot, um, but then I like each one has like a different feel. Like the bronzes, I love 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 for more like a classy when I've got my leather and more formal. But then the pink and the blue, like I just love wearing out. But then weirdly enough, like that silver one with that seconds hand, that's another polarizing one. Um, I I like a super clean dial, but I need something to pop. But I felt like every other watch had so much color, and so I was like, how do I make this
Hmm.
pop without the color? And so
Mm.
yeah, so it's this weird thing of like when you look at the watch, like all you see is the seconds hand move, and it's kind of cool. So that's the M1.2. That's the one that is out now, except it's out of stock right now. Um, and so for this one, I was really happy to hit an inflection point after the first big sale of this. Let me close that blind real quick.
No problem.
Yeah,
No
yeah.
problem.
After the first batch and run, I realized that I wasn't having fun anymore assembling. Like I'm good at it, I like it, or I like it on a smaller scale. But once it
Okay.
became like the mass production of making them, it just wasn't fun anymore. And so my wife was like, you can offload it. And the nice part was like it got to the point where it's like, great, I sold enough watches, I can now find someone to help out with that assembly in QC. And so I was really really lucky in linking up with Maryland Watchworks with Eugene, which is
Mm.
a show that I just went to. And he's great. I got to tour his shop. He's in Hagerstown, and he's going to be assembling and QCing and regulating all the watches, specifically for starting with the M1.2. So really excited to pair up with him, and that's why things are out of stock, because all the ones that I built are out of stock, and then the next ones coming are the ones assembled and QC'd and regulated by him.
Yeah, listen, you get to that point where, especially if you're not enjoying it, right? It's really romantic to know that you were putting it together
Yeah.
at one point for sure, and especially that you enjoyed it. But when you get the interest and people are starting to buy, and especially if you have to keep up with production, I mean, it just makes sense to offload it, and it makes 100% sense for you to do so when you're not enjoying the process anymore. Put your passion towards something else. Maybe go back to designing and push that instead of getting so hands-on. So that makes a lot of sense. I gotta say, going back to so now that makes sense to me, right? Because you said that the M1.2 is more of when you were matured in creating the watches, right? So that was further down the road. The going back to the loom, so usually people can't really trust so much the pictures that they see online. The picture that is shown that I was going through before, that the loom is that good. In fact, I think it's even better in person. It's polarizing, right? The hands just the second the minute hand and the hour hand just float, right? And then the second hand, you know where it is, even because it's going along that track. It's so well done. It's so well done, Mark. I was really, really impressed. Like, the closer and closer I got to it, it was like I was discovering things, right? Like, you have this Braille-like track system on the outside of it. I should probably put up the screen so people could see what I'm talking about. That was very fun for me to discover, for one. I fully enjoyed the loom. Like I said, it was a lot brighter than expected. I love that second hand being a one-way street too. That's very different. I know you're dying to jump in. I'm going to stop in a minute. That second hand being a one-way street. I know, some people don't like the red tip. I love the red tip. So I have this blown up as far as the logo goes on here, but I can't see it. I had to like really get up on the dial for me to see it in person. Go ahead.
Can you click on it to make it bigger? No?
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
Yes. There we go. So this is what I'm talking about. So this off the bat gave me a minimalistic vibe. Yes.
Yeah.
And you could have chosen to not put those brails on the end, and people would have been mad, right? You often already I'm serious. You often take a lot of risk, right, in your designs already. I love the fact that you added those small, I'm calling it like Braille, into there, because you're still going to make those people happy, but you can't see it. So it's kind of like the best of both worlds as far as putting that whole picture together. Sandwich dial, it looks like, for the loom. Talk about that loom track, Mark. Like, am I saying it that right? Is that actually a sandwich type of dial?
Yeah, it's a sandwich dial.
Okay.
It's loom. But I want to go to the point where you said that there like things you still kind of discover on it. And for me, when it's night and I see the seconds move, it's like a game of like, where is that seconds? And like once you see it, like, and then it like hides right in between, like, and
Yeah.
it's like it's just so fun. And the Braille as well, like. I love that people have feelings towards it. Like even any feelings are good. But as you said with that Braille on the outside, you can't see it when in most scenarios. But it's really when you really look up closer, like at a certain light. And the purpose of that was I want to be able for it to be an accurate timekeeper. Like it's a Miyota 9039.
Mm-hmm.
It's regulated with usually, officially under 10 seconds, but it's usually between like 0 and 3 seconds. So like it's pretty accurate. And so being able to actually, set it right, I felt, I don't know, obligated to put it there. So it's there when you need to set it, or if you really need to know exactly what time it is. But for the most part, it's that minimalistic look. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So you talked about the movement. So I actually, that was like one of my major questions for you. What So you already were like messing around with movements, restoring them and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So when it came down to the movement, was it more of a feel of, hey, I want this quality, or was it like I got to make it fit the case, or was it kind of like both?
Um, so what I found in my research and firsthand experience of getting different watches, I tried the Seiko NHs, and
Mhm.
they're great, they're workhorses, but they're just too bulky, just like
Right.
the feeling is not as good. And with the 9015s, like once I found the 9015s, I was like, this is so slim. They are just like bulletproof. They are like everyone sings their praises. The only thing that's polarizing is the rotor, but like in my
Mhm.
opinion, I kind of like it. I don't notice it, but when I do, I like it. So again,
Right.
there's always polarization. And then yeah, it's the smooth sweep, so it's a 2800 or 28,000. Um yeah, I really liked the idea of the Salida 200, but
Mm.
what I looked into it was that QC wise, like there were more issues with the Salida than the Miyota. But again, like
Interesting.
different people feel different ways. And
Sure.
in talking with other watchmakers, different bike brands, um, yeah, there were mixed feelings on the Salida, and there were clear
Right.
feelings on the Miyota, and it was more kind of like a marketing thing. And I think for me, it's how do I get the slimmest, like most reliable, slick, like gonna like don't have to think about it movement in there, um, and keep pricing, as low, and yeah, that's how I landed on it. It's 3.9 millimeters, and everything else is at least 4.6 or bigger, and
Okay.
it's great, man. I love it.
Did you ever consider doing quartz, or was that like, it takes like the romance out of the watch?
That's a great question. I still toy with the idea because like I really like
Mhm.
the idea of making a kids brand, like just because
Oh, I like that.
I've got one kid and another kid on the way in November, so I'm like and they're boys, and so I'm like, it's like daddy's watch, and it's like I want to make a my kid watch, but with that
Right.
quartz, I think what it was is there's enough good court stuff that's like great that you
Mm.
can just get, and and I didn't really see a place for me in making it better. And I think for me in in that around $500 price point, I felt
Right.
really confident and I feel really good about coming in and saying like, hey, this is what I have to offer, and I think that this isn't quite being done, and
Mhm.
yeah, that feels like the sweet spot. I'm not going to rule it out, but I just like the smooth second sweep. I love it.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, like, I think that's for the most part, most of us, man. Like, we really are in love with that sweeping hand, and I'm so glad that you went that route as well. So you went to the show recently. What was that like for you? And actually, what I'm curious about is getting your gauge on the market, and also now as a brand. First of all, how long has Mark Time been out? That's important for me to know.
So started in 2020, the first watch
Okay,
released in 2021.
okay.
So yeah, 3 years for the first watch.
Got you. And when did you start getting into doing the shows, like presenting them, being part of them, actually being in the show?
That was, I think, District Time was the first one, and
Mm,
that was 2 years ago. One, wait,
okay.
a little over a year and a half ago, and
Mhm.
man, I just had a blast. I like going there. It's kind of like a fanboy thing where it's like, oh my gosh, I know you. Like this is so cool. And like
Right.
when I was in Austin for a year, I got to build my watches with Dufresne Steven. So that was
Mm,
really cool. So when I saw him, I was like, "Oh, I know you. I went to your house and I assembled watches." Um, and so yeah, it was just cool to just like fanboy for a little bit, and then
mhm.
it was then, oh great, we're all just like kind of like coworkers. Like that's kind of what it felt
Right.
like. Was
Okay.
like, hey, what you have to be respectful of, like you don't want to like you know steal from other people or whatever. So it's just, but so there are certain things where it's like, oh, I'm not going to ask you like, hey, who's your manufacturer, what's your cost for this. But there are some
Mm,
people where it's like, hey, it's cool, like they're super happy and like, you know, exchange information. But you fill that out. But I have like wonderful, just like surprising heart to hearts with like people about like life, and I think that's the whole point. Is like, it's all BS. You know, it's stupid.
Right.
It's like sports, like, but it's just an excuse to go hang out and talk about nothing. I think,
Right.
and in a weird tangent, my uncle passed 3 months ago,
Sorry to
and
hear that.
yeah, thank you. And um, we, for like 5 6 years, we he never said an emotional thing ever. Like, he was allergic to it. He was like, nope, nope, nope,
Mhm.
nope. But we always talked about tech, and we talked about watches a little bit, but for the most part, it was like audiovisual stuff. And weirdly enough, like, I felt so incredibly close to him, yet never ever saying anything like "I love you." Like, he wasn't a hugger,
Mm.
but at the same time, like, I didn't have a question in my mind of like how he felt about me. And I think that's the fun part about, you know, something like watches in this community, is like, I don't have to be like, oh my gosh, Skylar, I love you. You're so great. And I love your content. It's like, we can just BS about things that
Yes.
don't matter and just
Yeah.
enjoy that.
Yeah, and it turns into something. Usually, it turns into something much bigger. You just get into your personal life. It's just a way for us to connect, right? It's for us
Yeah.
to fall in love with these trinkets that we put on our wrist and just have that human connection, that thirst that we had from coming off of COVID. Some of people are saying what's going on in the chat. Trap is saying that the courts would be dope for the kids. And I agree with that. I think, listen, my wife is a school teacher and she has a lot of passion for kids. So I also, in part, have a soft spot for it. And I think that that would be really cool. I definitely would stand behind it as far as getting it out there. I love doing this, but when it comes to that, I think you're on good track there. And I think that's something you should continue to dive into. Space G, what's going on? Um, yeah, man. So you're obviously getting a lot of feedback from doing the shows. You've seen that that's super valuable. That's something that I often preach to a lot of people. I know not everybody has the time to get out to the shows, which is why a lot of my focus is going to be going to the shows and doing some recording there because, at the end of the day, people are not fortunate enough to catch these shows. They have to work, whatever the case may be on that. But when you do the shows and you get the feedback, are you doing sales at the shows or are you just doing like straight up research? Like you've obviously been selling your watches, but in the past, was it more something like you're just going for the feedback like Chris Ward, or are you
Hmm.
also doing some selling? Like talk about that and your experience at the shows, like a little bit more in detail, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I sell a little bit, but I think,
Mhm.
um, you know, in talking with other watch guys, they were like, yeah, if I can sell X number of watches to cover the costs, like, great. And so I think that's the goal, economically, is like, hey, if I can cover costs, that's great. But for me, you know, at this point, it's one, like, chatting with my coworkers, which are the other
Right.
vendors, and then the other is like talking to people, and I try to shut up because
Mm.
um, I equate it to like parenting, where it's like you raise a kid and you tell them all the things, whatever, and you shape it, and it goes out. And
Mhm.
whatever happens after that, like, I hope that, you know, my child go goes and lives beyond my limited, you know, vision. And that's kind of how I see it. Is like musicians talk about this with songs, where it's like
Okay.
they wrote this song and it was this experience, but it has like multitude, like millions of different experiences for different people with different
Mhm.
associations. And I think that's the fun part, is like, when I shut up and get out of the way, there's an opportunity for someone to associate a watch that I worked on with something
Right.
way better than any story or that I have associated with it. And
Mm.
that, I think that's my favorite part. And then the other is just like talking to people, man. I love I met this wonderful, wonderful couple that I talked to for, I think, an hour and a half, and then it was so great that they said, "Oh, we're going to this watch meetup tomorrow," and then I left the show early the next day, and I somehow, like, it was the first event my wife ever wanted to go to, because I was like, "They're so great," and so, like, we had a great time, and they were great. And then so yeah, so it's the vendors, my coworkers, it's the people who are experiencing it in their own way, and I just get to shut up
Mm.
and be there. And then the other is chatting for hours with random people about random stuff.
Yeah, so it's almost as enjoy. I know there's a lot of prep, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot that goes into doing the shows that could give you the stress. But I would imagine that you're giving me some insight to think that the brand owners that are doing these events or being part of them at least are having just as much fun as we're having, connecting and showing their pieces and talking with their coworkers, as you say. So it's almost as exciting, if not anything else.
Sure.
So let's talk, and we're all over the place here. We're just two guys having some fun. Let's talk about this bracelet, man. Because all right, I just touched it today. Okay. But there's a lot of things that I can already tell you got right. I love the sizing, I love the H-link, I love the polishing that you have on here. And the most important part, and this is coming from a watch collector. I'm collecting for about 4 years, Mark, just so you know, and micro brands, independent brands rather, probably only about a year and a half to 2 years that I really started diving deep. But the quick adjust at the bracelet, oh man, thank the Lord. Thank the Lord. Talk about the bracelet, the process for that. And I'm pretty sure you got the same feedback that I'm giving you now to improve, if not, put into it before you even released it. But it's phenomenal. And I want to know about what that process looked like for you.
Yeah. So I had a bunch of different watch bracelet designs where I wanted to do, and like all this custom stuff. And then in the end, just like it would be so costly. In addition to that, like
Mm.
I would have to go through so many different iterations. And so I think that was the point where, to be honest, that was me looking at the market and saying, like, great, what is a more widely used thing that is at the highest quality? And for me, in working with my manufacturer, in looking at other brands, I was like, this H-link bracelet, 20 millimeters tapered down to 16, with then the
Mhm.
adjustable micro adjustment clasp. Um, as you see with the M3, like I tried to do the budget version and it just doesn't work. It just like
Mm.
it's fine, but like there's something about both the bracelet and the clasp. Like right now, I'm trying to figure out packaging with like watch rolls, and what I want to do is get a watch roll where once people get it, they get to use it for like watch meetups and stuff like that, which I may pick your brain on later. But
Mhm.
for me, I'm like, it's not perfect. It's not perfect. It's not like I won't settle for it because I know like it's not gonna make me click. And once I got that bracelet on the M4 and now the M5 and the clasp, it was like, that's it. It's perfect. Like, so yeah, I feel the same way of it. It's great.
Yeah, so it's just the overall theme for you has just been evolution, just been listening, learning what works, what doesn't work, and wanting to give the best product that you can at the end of the day. And I actually, again, I'm jumping around. I actually had a question for you for the M1 dot two, right? The only thing that I really had about it is the drilled lugs. Now,
Yeah.
my question to you is, and I don't know this, and I'm sure obviously that's probably going to raise a cost in a watch. But my question is to you is, does that raise the cost of the watch significantly?
Nope. Zero.
It zero.
Zero.
Okay. Okay. So is that just something, because now from what we've talked about, the M1.2 was a little bit later, right? So you had already some feedback and everything else. Did nobody bring up the drilled lugs part? I mean, I know you. I think you have the quick release on there, right?
For the M1.2 or for which one?
M1.2.
M1.2 does not have the quick release.
It
It does
doesn't have the
not
quick
have. No,
release.
sorry. The straps have the quick release on the leather, but not the rubber.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Gotcha. So, okay. So that for me is somewhat of a band-aid. I'm being a little harsh here. I'm being a little rough with you. But my question is, why not put the drilled lugs in there?
Because I have cases that don't have drill lugs.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. No, listen, that's all right. I got you. It's not something that you wanted to do. It's not something that, it's like what it is what it is.
Yeah.
I got you. But that being said, when we go over to the M5, I believe you have the drilled lugs in there. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think uh, my thought is like, what do I want to wear? What do I want to deal with? And I
Mm,
go through phases of leather. I go through phases of rubber and metal. And what I realized, I remember in the Washingtonians and DMV watch groups, I was like, oh
mm.
no, only the what's it called, quick release for leather. And they're like, dude, if you just let go of the quick release, there are so many other great bands out there. And so,
Mm.
but I still want to make it easy to get on and off. So I was like, all right, drill lugs. In my opinion, like it takes away a little bit. Wait, I have drill lugs in there, right?
For
Oh
some
my
reason, it's not
gosh,
showing here.
no, I don't. All right, never mind.
Oh, so the
I think it's
okay,
the
so maybe
M4.
yes, yes, yes,
Skylar,
yes.
let's hammer home all the things that I did wrong. This is great. Number 3.
I'm sorry, man. Listen,
That's fine. This is great.
I gotta just keep it. I just gotta keep it honest, man.
No,
Here, listen, I've already said I do love the watch, all the watches all together.
you've
We're
got it
really
on. You've got it on.
nitpicking.
Take a look. Take a look.
Yeah,
Does
exactly.
it have drill
Oh
lugs?
yeah, yeah, yeah. This one has drilled lugs.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
one
yeah.
has drilled lugs.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I did a
that's
great
why I
job on the
got
4.
confused.
The 5, just awful. Just awful.
I gotcha. I gotcha.
So, anyways, yeah, with the
Uh,
5, it's got the quick release for the metal, so you
mhm,
don't need the drill lugs.
right.
So I think that was the thing, is that I think it looks a little cleaner without the drill lugs,
Mm,
and so um, my thought with that was like, if I can do um, a quick release on the primary strap, then I feel more confident in doing that cleaner look. So I think, yeah, that was the decision making process between the 4 and the 5.
Oh, I like that. I never even thought about how it disrupts the flow of the lug on the sides as, altogether. It's not something that I even processed,
So
like that's why I like having these conversations.
I want to share with you an obscure decision that
Mm,
I stole from Townsend Art. There's a guy in Lancaster. He's like one of the OG people still doing like, uh, great work. And he did an interview
mm.
with, I think, Teddy Baldassar. And he was
Okay.
talking about, it was a Q&A, and people asked, screw down, crown, or push pull. And he said, push pull. And he said, the problem is that people aren't using it. And if anything, like it increases the chance of issues with it, like later down the road.
Mm,
And so, um, people were like, "Oh, why isn't it screw down crown?" Like, it doesn't cost more or less. It's really just a design decision. And so for me, I was like, I went with that obscure like quote from this guy who's like, "No, he makes good watches." But now the M6, which I won't share designs, but I can talk a little bit about, does have a screw down crown, because I was like, you know what? Everyone's asking for it. I'm going to give it. We'll see how it
right.
goes. If people then hate on me on that one, then we'll see. Then someone's going to hate on something, but they
Right.
can't hate on me for taking that advice, or they will. But
Yeah, they'll always find something, unfortunately. I
it's
think
fun.
I love, yeah, and I love that you're staying true to yourself, man. If you don't want it on a design, you don't do it. And I respect that wholeheartedly. You could get lost in too many opinions and too many things that people say. So I actually like the fact that you're able to stick to your guns on certain things, and I didn't know, I wasn't aware at least that it doesn't really change the cost. I just assumed if you are drilling holes in there, that's an added step. It has to be refined. It has to be done right, and that's good information for me to know, for sure.
There's certain things where like their design, where like it costs a lot more, but like people
Mhm.
actually prefer it the other way. And so that's the weird part, is like certain things are like, it doesn't cost any more or less. It's just like preference. And there's other things that may cost more, but people don't like it. They like the option that actually costs less.
Got it. Got it. Space G's got a question for you. He's asking if you're using the MWW
Ah.
7081 from the interview with Roland Murphy. What?
Maryland Watchworks. Yes, that's the RGM interview. Yep, that's the one.
Mm,
Space. Good job.
mm.
That may or may not be Eugene in disguise, but the Maryland Watchworks, I am still considering the Maryland Watchworks movement.
Mm.
I think in giving you insight in like my long term North Star, the more German that I can kind of like move, the better. But as far as
Hmm.
movements, I think I want to try to keep it as accessible as possible when it comes to like price point.
Yes.
And that said, I think that if I do like a step up, it would be a significant step up, and it would be, a significant step up in cost of just like the raw cost of things. But as far as the Maryland
Hmm.
Watchworks movement, it is not out of the question. It is something that I think about because I've already started my first foot in the water with Eugene and Maryland Watchworks with assembly and QC and regulation.
Gotcha, gotcha. So you're just getting started. There's a lot
Yeah.
in store. There's a lot of different angles that you want to move to next. Because that was going to be one of my go-to questions for you. It's where do you see the company moving forward next? But you've already told us that you're looking at a couple of things. You're relinquishing some responsibilities, so we're probably going to see that happen. You're upping production. You're sitting to your guns as far as all of the designs go. Like I said, so I love that, man. It's you're just like I feel like you are just an enthusiast, another enthusiast that took the lunge, that took the leap, and just a normal collector like everybody else, man. So I got to ask you this. Obviously you want to put your watches from your company on, man, but what is your favorite independent brand outside of yours, if you don't mind me asking? That's a tough question.
So, I'll highlight the people that are my coworkers. So like
Okay.
Richard Harvey, I had a great combo with, and I
Mhm.
have his watch, and it's super fun. And like his ability to work in AutoCAD and really create these dimensional dials and hands, like so
Mhm.
cool. Check him out. Also, Haim, I got to talk with him a lot. I love his
Mhm.
inspiration of like he's got that Patek kind of like vibe with a lot of his stuff. In
Mm.
addition to that, I forget which one it is, but he started talking to me about like grade 2 and grade 5 titanium for his cases. And one of his, the classic something uses grade 2 with a coin bezel. And it's just like
Mm.
talking to him and figuring out like that choice and testing things out. Like, I love what he's doing with that.
Right.
Also, yeah, I'll shout out Eugene because I'm now working with him. But I love the funness of how like classic. It's like this opal, like old school, like very not antiquated is bad, but like yeah, kind of like this old look, but then just fun sparkle on top with like the rainbow
Mm.
colors around. So I love what he's doing with that. Um, yeah, and then also, gosh, Zane, I forget the name, but another guy that was at the look at all the vendors at the whiskey watches and whiskey event. But there's another guy from Toronto. He's doing the Toronto show,
Mhm.
and I love that he's been playing with different like one of one dial inserts, and that's not dial bezel inserts. Um, so yeah, like there's lots of cool people in that area. And as far as like outside of the microbrand world,
Yeah.
I really love what Union Glass does. I think it's like Alana Ozona is like the rich man's, and then you have the Glass to Original, which is like
Mm.
the upper middle class, and then you have Union Glass, which is like the lower middle class. I don't know, like it's,
Mhm.
but I think what's and then oh god, I have a love hate relationship with Grand Seiko because I just don't like the super
Mm.
high polish of the hands, but I think the dials and everything else is spectacular. So if they had like a more of a matte or like a brush finish, which is like the stuff that I like. Um, but yeah, so personally, Union Glass is one of my favorites. I've got their 2020 red chronograph, which is awesome. Um, and then I think my next like nice purchase will probably be maybe a Grand Seiko, but we'll see.
Mhm. Yeah, no, fair enough. Grand Seiko, they just do exceptional things. Like they're just really innovative, and obviously they're finishing, like you mentioned, but they really have some really good stuff as far as just throughout the years, right? Like they single handedly caused the quartz crisis, like Seiko itself. But when you look at Grand Seiko being the higher end of it, they continue to do these movements that we've never seen before and everything else. So that's cool, man. That's really nice. Um, Yeah, it's pretty much. I think I've covered most of the base. I gotta ask you this, right? This is more for me now.
Yeah.
I'm planning to go to the Watch and Wind and approach people and have conversations. And you've been to more shows than I have. Like, do you have any tips for me being able to navigate that? Like, kind of the culture, the do's, the don'ts. What can I expect? Like I don't want to just start running up on brand owners like, hey, I do content. Do you mind if you know what I mean? I want to obviously be respectful. I know how to do that, but there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of motion. This is New York at the end of the day, so I'm expecting it to be quite heavy. But yeah, what would you say? Like, how would you like to be approached if we didn't know each other, right? And I came to the show, and I've got somebody recording. How would you like me to approach you?
So back in my interview days, I loved doing lots of research on people and then showing up and then asking questions
Mm,
that they're thinking about now. So if you had the time, do the research on the individual brands and like have like a pointed question about something or like something that you resonate with. I
okay.
think I think that would really connect you very quickly because I think like
Mm,
we all like talking about it, man. And so if
right.
you're able to do enough research to be able to ask a question that they're thinking about now, that's really
Yeah.
fun because they get to kind of work it out as they talk to you.
Right.
And then the other is just like show up and ask like, hey, can I, you know, do some content with you? Because for the most part, everyone's gonna be like, yeah, sure. That's why we're here.
Right. Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what independent brands really lean on, like just getting to do stuff like this and getting to go to the shows. It's really, really important not having the brick and mortar. So I definitely understand that. But yeah, I appreciate it, man. That's some good stuff. That's pretty much all I had, man. Anything
Cool.
else that you wanted to share before we close out? Anything you
Yeah.
wanted to talk about?
Can I ask one or two questions about you?
Absolutely. I'm glad you said that, man. I
Great.
I don't hardly get people ask questions about me. Go ahead.
Great, yeah. So I love that when you reached out and out of the blue, and it was just like I think that's the fun part is like people who are just like I don't know interested and like want to talk and like want to chat. And I talked to you earlier about how'd you start, and you said it was like within 1 week of like I think I'm gonna do this, and then like you just started doing it. And I watched your first
Right.
video, and it was bad, and it's great because
That was
because you
terrible.
because you did it. And
Yeah.
I think you and I with anyone doing kind of their own thing, it's like you just start and you get a little bit better after each time. And I remember like when I sent out the first watch, I was like,
Mm.
oh great, they're not going to he's not going to look closely at the watch. And then by the time like the videos that led up to it was like, oh no, he's starting to close now. He's like up in his video game now. And so what are the next steps that you see, and then what's your like long-term vision for your content?
So the next steps, I would say immediately for me, would just try to find how I can separate myself a little bit more. I struggle with, you know, just having a different voice, right? Like so I'm doing a lot of like voiceover nows, right? And I have a lot less time just getting in front of the camera and doing it because that requires a lot more energy and it requires a lot more takes or whatever you want to call it. So I struggle with just trying to separate myself a little bit more on the long forms. Lives are a lot easier because not a lot of people tackle lives, and you're getting me, right? I can't act anything out. This is who I am. But I think that short term, what's right in front of me, what I really want to do is just work on putting my own stamp on things, like just staying original with the content, but also being able to give the people who are viewing something they're not getting from another channel. And I find that that's the most effective. When I go to Andrew Morgan or when I go to just a different person, there's something about them. There's an essence that you're like, oh, that's that guy. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And I don't think that I've found that yet. And I'm completely okay. I'm not putting myself on a hook. I let myself off the hook because I'm still focused on the technical things of growing, right? Where I want to be long term, I don't have an answer for you. And I purposely don't have an answer because I'll be honest with you, Mark, I didn't even know that I'd be doing this right now. And I love that. I
Yeah.
love that I'm just in a sea of this whole mission statement. I know that I want to affect change in a positive way. And the way I want to do that is make everybody in the community of watches feel equal, right? No matter what you decide to collect, I know that I want the community to feel like, hey, if you collect fashion watches, come over to the table, have a conversation. I want to push that agenda. But long term, aside from that, I don't know, man. I'm just a kid in a jungle gym, baby. I have no idea where I'm going.
Are there any things where you're already realizing that like you want to say no to, so you can say yes to something else?
Is there anything that I realize I want to say no to so I could say yes to anything else? That is a good question, man. I'm taking some notes from you, my guy. These are the things you're talking about. Um, I'm not really good. I'm not really for, like, this is not for me to make money. And I never wanted it to be about money at all. So I don't really want to take like legitimately paid promotions, meaning I'm going to give you $1,000 to make this video. I don't want that. If somebody wants to gift me a watch, that's fine. But I don't want it to be so much of a focus on making this a business, because it is a hobby for me. I have a full-time job. I do this out of pure passion. Um, I want that to open the doors of being able to resonate with people, right? Where they feel like, wow, he's really speaking his mind. I really want to connect with him because he's a content creator that I know that's going to be genuine all the way, right? He's not just taking a bag of money. Oh, there's these affiliate plans and everything else. So yeah, man, that's really important to me, to keep this lighthearted fun, have a mission statement behind it. I try to move around as if it's a business, right? I want you to go on my channel and say, he's giving me the same quality as a full-time YouTuber, but always it's going to be through passion, and it's just going to be fun and a hobby. And the doors that I want to open is exactly, I'm here, baby. I already made it. Like, talking to you, this is blowing my mind already. So I'm not really so concerned too much about like, man, I really got to sit down with this guy or this guy or this guy. I'm just asking the question. And if they can refer to my channel and they like what they see, perfect. If not, if I'm not for you, I'm not for you. That's it. I just want to keep it positive. I want to push the agenda of everybody feeling like they have like a home with this channel and with whatever content I do, right? I'm on Watch Crunch as well, and I have a community there that support me. A lot of them are from there. And that's pretty much it, man. How's that answer? How's that long-winded answer for you?
I guess my other question is like the community. So I see you on Watch Crunch, and you've got this live stuff. So like, what platforms? Like, so for me as a micro brand, the League of Microbrands on Facebook, the microbrand subreddit and watches subreddit, then my local groups like DMV Watch Group and Washingtonians, and then obviously District Time Show, like my local stuff.
Sure.
But so between like online and in person, like what are the communities where, I don't know, you feel most at home or just like get the most traction?
You fired off a lot of communities. I haven't been a part of that many to really speak to it that way. I'm collecting 4 years. I'm in communities for about, I think I started Watch Crunch. And mind you, Watch Crunch was like the first social media entity that I really did, right? I don't have a Facebook, I don't have an Instagram. If I made an account, I never used it. I just wasn't a social media person. So entering these communities is kind of new to me when it comes to that. But as far as my interactions with the ones that I've had with Watch Crunch, it's just been a super positive thing. And I'm okay with growing from there, but I think that I don't want to spread myself too thin, right? This is still something that I'm doing as a passion, and I have a full-time day job. I have other responsibilities, so I'm trying to balance that scale. But versus in live, that's another thing too. I've only gone to one show. I had a phenomenal time. I really did. I don't have the time to go to a red bar and go to this meeting and go to that meeting. So it's kind of limited. Thus far, every interaction that I have has been phenomenal. I think just in general, as a blanket, watch collectors are just good, genuine, humbled people for the most part. So it's been rather even as far as meeting people live and as far as what I've been exposed to in the watch communities, it's been an even thing, man. But obviously in person there's nothing like it. Like that's where you get the energy. You feel the energy and you could really connect for the most part.
All right, why not buy any of my watches?
Why not buy, like, for me, or for like why do I think other people wouldn't buy?
Yeah, because
Very different
I
answer.
saw there was a video. Your wife bought you a watch that was like the super slick. I forget. It starts with a V, I think.
Vincenzo,
Yeah, that
the
one.
Italian brand.
Yeah. So she got you that one, right?
Hmm.
But beyond that, like, yeah, what makes you like? What other micro brands do you actually buy?
Gotcha. So I just started diving into micro brands, and it was exactly at the point, just like you, I started, you know how it is when you start customizing,
Yeah.
you're talking about hundreds of watches a possibility, right? So when I discovered micro brands, at the same time, I was really maturing as a collector and saying, okay, let me pump the brakes, let me do some homework and see exactly what I'm really attracted to in these brands before I just fire them off. So to be honest with you, when it comes to micro brands, I don't have a lot of micro brand watches, right? A lot of them are either custom or like watches that everybody know, like the SKX, the Tissot PRX, like whatever watch I say prior to me customizing, you'll know it and it'll be affordable. So I don't want to say that there's a such thing where I'm like, okay, I'm not going to buy this micro brand if they do this, this, that, and the third. It's really just what flavor is my collection ready for at the time. Um, the only thing I could say that would really make me not buy from a brand is if I have a bad experience with them. Like I really believe like in the customer service, in being personable from micro brands, independent brands. I feel like that's essential because you don't have a brick and mortar where you could have a long, list of history with rapport with customers. So if I go to a show and I just get brushed off at a table or at an event, or customer service falls short with me trying to communicate with you about your watch online or whatever, that would turn me off from a brand. But I can't say anything else when it comes to, what they're making up into the watch. Like I don't have any reserves. It's just what my collection is ready for at the time and who I find is doing it, the best way.
Last question.
Sure.
Mark time is now Skylar time. What would you do?
Oh, if it was on my lap, right off the bat, what would I do? That's a good question, man. Ah, I guess, I guess I would go with another material, to be honest with you. I would just straight up do a titanium. I would do a
Okay.
titanium. You know why? Because, just speaking from my experience of what I'm ready for in my collections, that's exactly what I'm looking for. I'm looking for different materials in a watch, right? Whether it be carbon fiber, titanium, something obviously affordable because you have that, you have that market where you're trying to stay in. So you can't go too crazy and make a gold watch. But if I were you, I would do a titanium watch. I would do a titanium watch.
Grade 2, grade 5.
Grade 2, grade 5.
Which one?
Oh man,
Does it
it's
matter?
tough. It matters if it jumps the price. It matters if it jumps the price too much. I mean, because look, why pass up the opportunity to put a grade 5 to just make people happy? It goes back to like that screw down and that push down, right? Do you really need it type of thing? But if you can get your hands on it and it doesn't price you out of the market too crazy, I would do it. I would do it. Grade 5.
Cool.
Uh-oh.
Well,
Bad time.
yeah. Hey, bud. He can say hi if he wants. Do you want to say hi?
Mhm.
So we're about to meet
Aw.
Wesley, who the Wesley Blue is named after. Yeah, that's right.
Really? Hi,
And
Wesley.
here he comes. Can you say hi?
Hi.
Hi. How are you? I love your shirt.
He loves your shirt.
That's
Thank
so
you.
cool.
Say,
You're welcome. You love your dad's watches?
do you love Daddy's watches?
Yeah.
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 Do you wear them?
Do you wear Daddy's watches? Yeah.
It was a pleasure to meet you, Wesley.
Say bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye.
All right.
All right,
man.
Mark. It was a pleasure, man. I appreciate you coming on.
Cool, man. All right.
All
Talk to
right,
you later.
let's do this again. Talk to
Yeah,
you
sounds
later.
good. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, guys, there you go. There you have it. That is Mark, an absolute gentleman. I really do appreciate him coming on. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. That was really fun, man. That was really fun, laid back. The guy's an absolute gentleman, as I always like to use the word, as my wife reminds me. And yeah, man, his collection, I dig it. I really, really dig it. If you guys get a chance, check it out. His website is Mark Time Watches. I'll leave, of course, links in the description. How do you guys feel about it? I know there's a couple people in chat. I don't know. Let me see if I can scroll down. I appreciate everybody joining in too. I'm sorry I couldn't get to the questions. If I did miss any, grade 5 without a doubt. Yeah, I said it off rip. I didn't even, I had to think about it a little bit because I know he's sticking within a price range. But that was my only reserve. Definitely go grade 5 if you can. Trap, thank you for coming in. Oscar, I'm saying hi to you guys at the end. I apologize, but I definitely want to. Space G, you always coming through. Yeah, man. So that's pretty much it, guys. I'm pretty much gonna wrap it up there. Thank you for joining in. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Look to do some more interviews with some brand owners, man. That was a lot of fun. And of course, guys, please don't forget, it all started with a watch. No matter where your watch collection takes you, no matter how you decide to collect, we're all welcome and equal on this channel, as we should be. I thank you guys for joining in, and I'll see you guys in the next one.